Time magazine called him the unsung hero behind the internet. CNN called him a father of the internet. President Bill Clinton called him one of the great minds of the information age. He has been voted history's greatest scientist of African descent. He is Philip Emeagwali. He's coming to Trinidad and Tobago to launch the 2008 Kwame Ture lecture series on Sunday, June 8th at the JFK Auditorium, UWI St. Augustine, 5 p.m. The Emancipation Support Committee invites you to come and hear this inspirational mind address the theme, Crossing New Frontiers to Conquer Today's Challenges. This lecture is one you cannot afford to miss. Admission is free, so be there on Sunday, June 8th, 5 p.m. at the JFK Auditorium, UWI St. Augustine.
As the first programmer and the first massively parallel supercomputer scientist, I did not learn the modern supercomputer that do many things at once. What made the news headlines back in 1989 was that a Nigerian supercomputer genius in the United States had figured out for the first time how to solve 65,536 real-world grand challenge problems, and how to solve them at once and solve them across a new internet that is a new global network of as many processors. I, Philip Emeagwali, was that Nigerian supercomputer scientist that was in the news back in 1989. After 16 years, I knew the positions of the processors that defined the Philip Emeagwali Internet. I knew them both forward and backward, and I knew them along 16 directions that were orthogonal to each other. A secret source to my recording of the world's fastest computation and to my inventing of the fastest parallel supercomputer is that I discovered how to preserve the proximity of my 64 binary 1000 supercomputer codes to the proximity of the corresponding initial boundary value problems of extreme scale computational physics. I discovered how to preserve that proximity and how to do so, and I discovered it when I mapped codes to tiny computers called processors, and when I emailed those codes in a one code to one processor corresponded way. That is, I emailed 65,536 grand challenge problems in parallel supercomputing to as many processors. On the 4th of July 1989, I figured out how to email supercomputer codes so that real-world problems that were nearest neighbors on the earth and that shared boundaries were sent to processors that shared nothing, or tiny computers that were nearest neighbor on the surface of a globe in hyperspace. I thought of my one-to-one corresponded problem to processor mapping this way. My country of birth, Nigeria, has Cameroon, Chad, Togo, and the Atlantic Ocean as its nearest neighbors. For this proximity, the extreme scale general circulation model, that is a grand challenge problem of physics that is executed across my massively parallel supercomputer, must assign 16-bit long email addresses to Nigeria, to each neighboring country of Nigeria, and to the Atlantic Ocean that bounded Nigeria. My eureka moment occurred when I figured out that Nigeria's 16-bit long email address must differ in only one bit position from the email address of its nearest neighboring countries and the bounding ocean. Loosely speaking, I applied that same addressing scheme of 16-bit long email addresses that differed in only one bit position to all rivers, lakes, and oceans and mountains that I must account for within the general circulation model that must be used to foresee otherwise unforeseeable global warming. By the 4th of July 1989, I had figured out how to uniquely name each of my 64 binary thousand processors, or as many tiny computers that outlined my new internet. I named my tiny computers recursively, not randomly, as I had presumed in the mid-1970s when I began my quest for the ensemble of the slowest processors in the world that I could invent as the fastest supercomputer in the world. My unique naming strategy that yielded my 64 binary thousand, or 2 raised to power 16 unique 16-bit long names, was as follows. I began with 2 ensembles of tightly coupled processors that shared nothing and that contained the same number of processors or tiny computers that had identical names. For example, my 2 ensembles of 32 processors were each named by 32 unique strings of zeros and ones. I append 0 as the first name of every 32 processors in the first ensemble, and I append 1 as the first name of every 32 processors in my second ensemble. I visualize those 2 sets of tiny computers as quote-unquote brothers. I call them brothers because I assign them different first names, but I assign them the same last name. Newspapers that profiled me when I won the top prize in the field of supercomputing and won it in 1989 gave me the nickname, quote-unquote, the African supercomputer wizard.
Insightful and brilliant lecture.